The town of Red Hollow had seen its share of men, drifters, gunslingers, liars, and legends, but none of them carried themselves like Victor Hale. He arrived on a quiet afternoon, the kind where the wind barely stirred and the sun pressed down like a warning. His horse was black as coal, his coat long and dusted from travel, and his boots struck the wooden planks with a calm, deliberate rhythm that made people turn their heads. Within days, everyone knew his name. Victor Hale, the richest man anyone had seen in years. Gold coins passed through his fingers like water. He paid double for whiskey, tipped generously, and bought a room at the finest boarding house without asking the price. The saloon girls smiled wider when he entered. The men watched him with a mix of envy and suspicion. But Victor never stayed long in one place inside the saloon. He drank alone, spoke little, and left before midnight. To most, he was a mystery wrapped in wealth. To Clara Whitmore, he was something else entirely. Clara Whitmore wasn't like the others. She worked at the town's general store, a modest place filled with flour sacks, lanterns, and the faint smell of cedar wood. Her dresses were simple, her hair often tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes carried a quiet strength that came from years of taking care of herself. She noticed Victor. Of course, everyone did, but she didn't rush to greet him, didn't offer flirtatious smiles or linger in his path. When he entered the store one evening, asking for supplies, she treated him like any other customer. "What do you need?" she asked plainly. Victor seemed surprised. Most people tried to impress him. She didn't even look interested. "Just the basics," he replied. "Food, ammunition, and a lantern." Clara gathered the items without a word, placing them neatly on the counter. "That'll be $8. Victor pulled out a gold coin, far more than needed, and slid it toward her. "Keep the change." Clara didn't touch it. "I don't take extra," she said. $8 is enough." For a moment, Victor simply stared at her. Then, slowly, something changed in his expression, something softer. After that day, Victor began visiting the store more often, not always to buy something. Sometimes he just lingered. At first, Clara found it odd, but over time, their conversations grew. He asked about her life. She spoke of growing up in Red Hollow, of losing her parents young, of building a quiet, steady life on her own. She asked about him. Victor always answered carefully. "Traveling," he would say. "Business." Nothing worth telling. But Clara didn't push, and that's what made him stay. With her, he didn't feel like a man people feared or envied. He felt normal. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Victor walked Clara home. "You're not like the others," he said quietly. Clara smiled faintly. "I could say the same about you." Victor chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "If you knew the truth," he murmured, "you might not say that." Clara looked at him, curious, but he didn't explain. It happened on a cold night, the kind where the wind howled through the empty streets, and even the saloon closed early. Clara had trouble sleeping. Something restless stirred inside her, a feeling she couldn't explain. She stepped outside, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. That's when she saw him. Victor. He was mounting his horse, moving quickly, glancing over his shoulder as if making sure no one was watching. But Clara was. Without thinking, she followed. Keeping her distance, she trailed him beyond the edge of town, into the open desert where the moon cast long shadows across the sand. Victor rode for miles before finally stopping near a cluster of rocks. Clara hid behind a ridge, her heart pounding. What she saw next would change everything. Victor wasn't alone. 3 men emerged from the shadows, rough-looking, armed. Outlaws. They spoke in low voices, but Clara caught enough to understand. Next shipment comes through at dawn. Easy pickings. Same as before. Victor handed them a pouch. Gold. Her breath caught. No, this wasn't business. This was something else. Something darker. Then one of the men laughed. Never thought the great Victor Hale would turn into the richest thief in the territory. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. Thief? Victor said nothing. His silence said everything. The truth hit her like a bullet. His wealth wasn't earned. It was stolen. Worse, he wasn't just involved. He was leading it, raiding supply lines, robbing travelers, leaving no witnesses when things went wrong. The man she thought she knew didn't exist. Clara didn't wait. She stepped out from the shadows. Victor. The men turned instantly, hands on their guns. Victor froze. Clara? Her eyes burned with anger and something deeper. Pain. Tell me it's not true, she said, her voice trembling. Tell me you're not what they say. The silence that followed was unbearable. Victor looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't hide. I tried to leave it behind, he said quietly, but this is who I am. Clara shook her head. No, this is what you chose. The outlaws shifted uneasily. This ain't good, one muttered. Victor raised a hand, silencing them. Go, he told them. I'll handle this. They hesitated, then left. Now it was just the two of them. You lied to me, Clara said. I didn't lie, Victor replied. I just didn't tell you the truth. That's the same thing. Victor stepped closer. You don't understand. Out here, this is how people survive. Clara's voice hardened. No, this is how monsters survive. The words hit harder than any bullet. The sun was beginning to rise. A new day, but nothing felt new. Clara stood there, facing the man she once trusted. You have a choice, she said. Victor looked at her, weary. We all do. She took a deep breath. You can walk away from this. Right now. Leave the gold, leave the men, leave everything. Victor glanced toward the horizon. It wasn't that simple. Nothing ever was. And if I don't, he asked. Clara met his gaze. Then I walk away, and I make sure the town knows the truth. A long silence followed. Victor thought of the life he'd built, the power, the fear, the wealth. Then he thought of Clara, the only person who ever saw him as more than what he was. Slowly, he reached into his coat. Clara tensed, but he didn't pull a gun. He pulled out the pouch of gold and dropped it to the ground. I'm tired, he said. Tired of running. Tired of being this man. Clara didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. This doesn't erase what you've done. I know. Victor turned to his horse. Where will you go? She asked. Somewhere far, he replied. Somewhere I can start over, if that's even possible. Clara nodded. Maybe it was a redemption, but it was a beginning. Victor mounted his horse, then paused. For what it's worth, you were the only real thing I ever had. Clara said nothing. She simply watched as he rode away, disappearing into the endless desert.